And once again, welcome to yet another exciting edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. How is everybody doing? I hope you're enjoying SEC Media Days. I know we're about to wrap this thing up. So much to get into in the world of college football. I couldn't think of a better guest to bring on the show. He talks college football. He's got a podcast called Upon Further Review with Phillip Jordan. Please welcome to the Sports Beat, Phillip Jordan.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for having me on. Appreciate it. I have not made a big deal about this. We went back to calling it the Phillip Jordan Show.
Sometimes you just got to go with the original. Yeah, Phillip
Uh,
Jordan Show. I mean, you've had great guests on. I mean, you talk college football. You cover the Wiregrass area down in Dothan, Enterprise, Rehoboth, that whole area, the Wiregrass. But right now we got SEC Media Days. It's in Dallas. I think that it's a little different, but you're not seeing a whole lot of people travel. I mean, trust me, Phillip, I looked at the costs. I looked at plane tickets and I looked at hotel rooms. And I'll be honest with you, I'm excited it's coming back to Atlanta next year because I will make an effort to try to be there. But this time around, I know that with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma in the conference, they wanted to have it in Dallas. But what was been your impressions of SEC Media Days so far?
whenever you go into these things, how much do we really get out of it? And I'm not sitting here to complain about SEC Media Days, but it is kind of like coaches are going to say the normal stuff because you just reading some of the quotes that's been said the first 2 days. Like, it's just basic stuff. I think what's interesting, Greg Sankey talked about on Monday, the conference is not looking to expand right now. I think the Big Ten as well, because of course the dangling fruit of Florida State and Clemson. We all know those two want to probably leave the ACC, but can they? Will they? We don't know. I thought Kalen DeBoer on Wednesday had some. He was very interesting. I told some people, I said Nick Saban would not have been on at 9 a.m. Central Time uh, if he was still the coach at Alabama. He would have been more in the afternoon time slot. Uh,
That's right.
but but it is kind of weird. It's still weird getting used to seeing somebody else at the podium, especially when the SEC Network goes to their studio, not their studio show, but the people that have their discussing the talking heads and everything. See Nick Saban there. Of course, Nick Saban. I think it caught a lot of attention when he predicted Georgia and Texas to be in the SEC championship game. His former offensive lineman did not take kind to that on Wednesday. He said we're not going to pay attention to somebody that plays golf now. So he threw a little shade at Nick Saban about that, but I also think Nick Saban was not wrong with what he said. He said Alabama needs to shore up some secondary issues because when he left, a lot of the secondary left as well. Transfer portal, graduation, NFL draft. So it's been some interesting stuff. Of course, for me, as a guy that covers Auburn for last word in college football, I am looking forward to Thursday when we get to hear from Hugh Freeze, Peyton Thorne, that crew there at Auburn, and how it kind of ends up on Thursday. But on and then going to Friday when the media picks come out. So a lot of interesting stuff's been going on. We talked off air a little bit. It was funny. Kirby Smart talking about. He was talking to some of his players that were there with him about the video game. Of course, everybody's talking about that this week. I think that's getting more attention than the actual media days. To be honest with you, is the video game being out. But he was telling his players that that game's really got to be coming off the shelves. I don't know how they keep it in stores. And then two of his players kind of laughing at him like, Coach, they don't sell them in stores anymore. You download it. So just kind of gets Kirby Smart getting that, oh, I am that old moment.
Yeah, it's funny about the video game. It was a game that I used to play 10 years ago, back when it was NCAA football 14. But times have changed, and I am very just intrigued by people sharing the post on social media. I think it's exciting for the players too, that they're sending screenshots, posting on their social media. I mean, you got a player like Georgia, like Michael Williams, with a 93 rating. I mean, you have a KJ Bolden with an 80 rating, and he's only a freshman. I mean, they brag about their ratings. The game itself, because Phillip, you and I have busy lives. I mean, we do shows. I mean, if you're gonna play dynasty mode on this game, it takes up a lot of your time. And to be honest with you, I don't have a PS5 or an Xbox One X. They don't make this game for the Nintendo Switch. They don't make it for the PS4. So it's either these two systems. But what I've seen, and trust me, I have a nephew who's probably going to get the game. I just want to take a look at it and maybe play one time. But that is it for me. I think that my days of spending 2 hours a day playing Dynasty mode, I think those days are over.
I used to have a hack for that, how to get through a season pretty quick. A lot of people may not want to do this. On the old game, I don't know if the new game has this or not. It has Super Sim. So within the game, you could simulate stuff. So what I
That's
would
right.
do, I would just play offense. And then when my team flipped over on defense, who I was playing as, I would just simulate that possession. Now, if we get to the fourth quarter and the other team has kind of kept it somewhat close, okay, fourth quarter, I play defense. But yeah, the first 3 quarters, yeah, I was doing Super Sim. And look, if I was playing a team, if I got up in the dynasty or season mode up by 40 points at halftime, I just simmed the rest of the game. I just because my objective was to get through it. And as you're at work, going to school, podcast, writing, all the other stuff. I know I do. I just don't have time to sit there and play the whole game like that. So yeah, that was my hack for getting through them when I used to play. Now I don't have a system either, just because of my schedule. I just don't have time to play much outside of the summer. But a buddy of mine is coming over to my place Friday night. He has the game. He has the system.
Ooh.
So maybe perhaps next week on the Phillip Jordan Show, I can give a small review of the video game. A little tease for you. A little tease. Give somebody a reason to come over and check me out.
Yeah, this game is really taking the college football world by storm. But you like you mentioned, Philip, it is overshadowing SEC Media Days a little bit. Some of the takeaways I got, we had Bryce Kuhn on the Georgia Alabama Sports Live Show yesterday. He works at 24/7 Sports in Baton Rouge, covers LSU, and he talked about Brian Kelly took the podium first. And you talk about what explosive offense LSU was. Jaden Daniels won the Heisman, but they couldn't stop anybody, and they only won 9 games. And my question to you is LSU the sleeper team? Because I do feel their defense is going to be a little bit better, getting the defensive coordinator over from Missouri. But do you think that LSU could be that dark horse team that wins the SEC? Because I got to be honest with you, Philip, I do believe 5 teams from the SEC are getting into the college football playoff.
Well, I would put LSU right now as my 5th team in the SEC. I got Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, and LSU. And I really think Alabama and LSU could fight for that 4th spot too, because I think that the key with Alabama is we just don't know. We just don't know what they're going to look like, just because new coach, receivers, secondary, all that stuff. But I think LSU team. I like Garrett Nussmeier, and everybody's going to talk about the 2 receivers that were drafted in the 1st round. They're gone, but this team LSU has a history of putting out NFL wide receivers one after another. We've seen it over the years. I'm not really concerned LSU. LSU is going to have to run the ball more. They're going to have to be more with the running backs because they don't have Garrett Nussmeier is not Jaden Daniels. He does not have that running ability. He's got everything with his arm and up here with his head, how to figure stuff out, looking at defenses. But their defense is going to have to be better. And checking out some comments from Brian Kelly this week, talked about Harold Perkins putting on some weight, keeping him on inside linebacker. I still feel like that's a mistake for LSU. He was not that as good last year as he was his freshman year. And what made him great his freshman, he was just a terror for SEC quarterbacks. Getting after him, he reminded me a lot of some of your past great outside linebackers, edge rushers. Just get after the quarterback. And that really changes things when the quarterback has no time. I remember the Arkansas game his freshman year. He pretty much won that on his own. The LSU offense was horrible that day, but he caused havoc against Arkansas. So we'll see. Their defense is going to be better. Now, I don't think LSU has to have like a great defense to be a title contender or to just get into the playoffs. They just need to kind of get maybe in the top 40 defensively. But I feel like I just have confidence that the LSU offense is going to be just fine. It'll look different, of course, because Garrett Nussmeier is a different type of quarterback. But they've got receivers, they've got the tight ends, they've got the playmaker. I think offensive line are good. So yeah, LSU is kind of like one of those fringe teams. I think that maybe they get hot at the end of the year, and then they can make some noise in the playoff.
Well, they do have a favorable schedule. They get Ole Miss at home, and they get Alabama at home. No Texas or no Georgia, but remember they did away with the divisions. And no Auburn. You're not playing Auburn. Well, that's a good segue, Phillip, because we're going to talk about Auburn. You cover Auburn on your podcast as you cover not just the Wiregrass area, but you cover all college athletics in Alabama. And Auburn's one of those teams you cover. And Hugh Freeze, entering his second year as the Auburn Tigers head football coach, is going to be taking the podium tomorrow, wrapping up SEC Media Days. What are some of the things you're expecting him to talk about? I know that the question is going to come up, is Peyton Thorne the guy? That he's going to stick with Peyton Thorne. I do feel that Peyton Thorne does have weapons, especially Cam Coleman could come down as one of the greatest Auburn receivers. I mean, this is just an absolute playmaker. He's going to be playing on Sundays.
Yeah, Peyton Thorne is the biggest question for Auburn. And I know we're going to get questions to Hugh Freeze about that. And Peyton Thorne's going to be there with Hugh Freeze there. He's one of the players that's coming with him. But yeah, the Peyton Thorne stuff, that's the most important thing because they had the receivers. And like everybody is talking about Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, the freshman coming in, but they also did some work in the transfer portal when it comes to receiver. Keandre Lambert-Smith from Penn State. They got Penn State's number one wide receiver coming in. I think Robert Lewis from Georgia State, what I saw out of the spring game, he can be a very reliable receiver. Pretty much any pass that went his way, he caught. So having somebody reliable. And let's not forget about Rivaldo Fairweather at tight end. Their returning leading receiver from last year. Peyton Thorne relied on him a lot in the games. When he just needed somebody to make a play, he did. I mean, Rivaldo Fairweather, he's not much of a blocking tight end, but he can catch the football. And their running backs, Jarquez Hunter. He comes back, maybe one of the best, if not the best, one of the best running backs in the SEC. Of course, continue thoughts and prayers with Brian Petit as he goes through his recovery over what has happened with him, the tragedy over the offseason. But they have Jeremiah Cobb, Damari Alston. They've got running backs there. The offense, they went and addressed the offensive line and defensive line issues, and linebackers should be good. You got Jalen McLeod at the buck position as your pass rusher. He can get after the quarterback. Eugene Asante, another player that's going to be there with Hugh Freeze on Thursday, and then Austin Keys at linebacker. I think linebacker is solid. I wouldn't say they're great, but they're solid. Secondary is another question. I think your top two questions with Auburn is, can Peyton Thorne just be good? That's all he has to be. He doesn't have to be Heisman Trophy worthy. He doesn't have to throw for 4,000 yards. He just has to be a distributor of football and do not make mistakes. And then the secondary. They have talent in that secondary, but they lost a lot of guys. Keontae Scott is back, but he's moving. He was more of an inside corner defensive back last year, kick return specialist. Now he's playing outside corner. So how he adjusts to that role. But defensive back and quarterback are probably going to be – if I was there in Dallas, that would be two of the questions I want to ask you, Freeze, is how are those two positions lining up? Because that seems to be the talking point. And I'll say this on Auburn. I have been saying this for weeks throughout the whole offseason. Auburn can win 9 games this season if Peyton Thorne is just good. I mean, they could start 5-0. That's an important thing.
Oh, they got Oklahoma on the Plains.
Yes. Oklahoma's first ever road SEC game is going to Auburn. And if Auburn's 4-0, they're going to be feeling really good about themselves because they got Alabama A&M, Cal, New Mexico, and Arkansas. I don't think Arkansas is going to be good. I think Bob Petrino is going to be the interim head coach by the time we get to midseason. I think Arkansas fans are going to be just looking forward to the John Calipari basketball team by the time we get to mid-season of the football season. They're going to be like, okay, let's forget this football business. We got the good basketball team. So they're 5-0, Auburn, if you beat Oklahoma. First 5 at home, that's another factor in that. Then you go to Georgia. Do I think they're going to beat Georgia? No, I do not. But still, if you're 5-0 going to Georgia, you're probably going to be ranked in the top 10, especially beat Oklahoma.
That's going to be a big game. And that's their homecoming for Georgia.
Yeah, a little shade, I think, from the Georgia folks. Then you're at Missouri, who I'm not as high on this year as a lot of people are. I think they're going to be good, but how are they going to replace Cody Schrader at running back? He was such a big part of what made that offense work, their run game. If they don't have that same run game, can Brady Cook, Luther Burden, those receivers still have the same success passing? All right, then you have at Kentucky. But just don't know all about Kentucky, to be honest with you. They should beat Vanderbilt. They should beat Louisiana Monroe. A&M's going to be interesting, but that's at home. And then you go to Alabama. Now, Auburn against Nick Saban in Tuscaloosa usually was blowouts. Most of those games, I think, other than 09, was not that was the only one that was a touchdown difference in Tuscaloosa. So now Kalen DeBoer, his first taste in the rivalry, we'll see how it's different. So you look at that schedule, Auburn can win 9 games, and then you go win your bowl game. You go 10-3. Now we're going into 2025. Now, obviously, Peyton Thorne won't be the quarterback. Walker White or somebody else will be. But, yeah, that's a long-winded way. I think
Maybe
Auburn's
Juju
got a
Lewis.
shot. Yeah. Hey, and the thing about it, okay, the 3 games I think they will lose. I think they'll probably lose. They'll lose to Georgia, and I'm going to say lose to Alabama. I'm sorry, Auburn fans. I know you're not happy with me saying that. So they're probably going to lose either. I would think if I'm going 9-3, probably lose either Missouri or at Kentucky, maybe A&M, but I would more go at Missouri or at Kentucky just because you're going on the road. But if they win both those games, 10-2, playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I'm just saying there's a roadmap to that playoff berth. Because you're going to keep a 10-2 SEC team out? I don't think so.
No. All right, so what happens if they lose to Oklahoma? Do they start hitting the panic button? Do they say, well, Auburn is just not quite ready yet? Because this same scenario happened a couple of years ago when they had Penn State at home, and Penn State just blew them out.
Yeah, then that's when things can get really dicey, and that could derail your season. Because as I said, you would be 4-1. Then you're going to Georgia. Okay. Then you go to Missouri. You go to Kentucky. See, that's why starting 5-0 is so important. Because you're following that with 3 straight games on the road at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. Now, then you get Vanderbilt in the start of November. So then, okay, so if that happened, then losing at Monroe, then you're maybe looking at a 7-win season at the best for Auburn. So that's what I'm saying. Those first 5 games, that Oklahoma game is kind of like the tipping point for the Auburn season. They win that game, I can see this team winning 9 games. They lose that game, it might be 7 or 8.
Phillip, I actually believe that is the most important week in the SEC because you got Georgia playing Alabama in Tuscaloosa, and you got Auburn hosting Oklahoma, and it could determine who's going to end up playing in Atlanta for the SEC championship.
Yeah. Man, there's so many big weeks. Excuse me. So many big weeks with this season. And I mean, you look at the schedules, Richard, just the matchups. I mean, I remember, and two, people asked Kirby Smart about Texas, and he's like, y'all completely ignoring the Clemson game. And that's the thing with Georgia. Texas may have the best record in the SEC this year, but Georgia may go and win the SEC title because Georgia's got a much tougher schedule. Because you've got Clemson, which I think they're going to beat Clemson by multiple touchdowns. I'm not too high on Clemson. I think the ACC is Florida State's conference to win or lose, however you want to word that. I think actually I know you didn't ask about this. I think the team that's probably the biggest threat to Florida State is the Miami Hurricanes.
But Cam Ward, Mario Cristobal, yeah, he can recruit.
And they have 2 receivers on that team that were both in the top 5 in the ACC in receiving last year. Little plug. I wrote about that over at Last Word on College Football. Everybody wants to go check it out. But, yeah, they got a couple guys over there at receiver to look out for. And I think they've improved at quarterback. We'll see what they do at defense. Now, here's the key with that, Richard. Has Mario Cristobal gotten better at the end of games as a coach? Yeah. That's the deal. That's the deal because they should have had 2 more wins last year. If he just
not taking a knee is going to haunt him.
What was his excuse for that? Wasn't it why he said he wanted to get like somebody some more yardage or something like that?
I mean, I can't even comprehend that.
I think it was, but at the end of the day, you got to win a football game. That's your top priority.
Yeah, your defense has got to stop Georgia Tech. Which, Phil, my last question to you before I let you go, because I know you got other shows and, it's SEC Media Days. There's just a lot going on. The college football playoff. Here's what we know. That a group of 5 team is going to get in. Probably a Tulane, a Boise State, maybe a Georgia State if they go undefeated. I highly doubt it. But they're probably going to be the 12th seed. And then we're going to have the automatic first round buys, the conference champions. I think, like you mentioned, I agree. Florida State's going to win the ACC. I think Utah wins the Big 12,
I agree.
which means all these at large bids. Do you think they're just going to be divided up among the SEC and Big 10 teams? Or do you think that a Big 12 team like Oklahoma State, if they only have one or two losses, will sneak in? Or a team in the ACC like a Miami, if their only loss was to Florida State, that they'll sneak in? Or do you think that the College Football Committee is going to give these berths to the next best teams based on strength of schedule, and they probably will come to the conclusion that the two best conferences are the SEC and the Big Ten? I mean, why not? I mean, they're the conferences with the most teams with a championship pedigree.
First off, how dare you not mention the two-time defending Sunbelt champion, Detroit Trojans?
You know,
my shoulder right now.
Here's the thing, Troy, and we're going to cover Troy on our podcast in Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I like Troy. I mean, I think that Troy, if they go undefeated, they are well deserving. First of all, if the Sun Belt champion goes undefeated, they are deserving of a spot in the college football playoff. But I was just saying Georgia State because, you know, we have that local. By the way, I'm wearing the Isaiah Crowell shirt right now. Del McGee was his coach in 2007, and he's now the new head coach at Georgia State. But yeah, I got love for Troy.
Now, you notice for people watching this on YouTube or wherever it's at, there's not a South Alabama helmet sitting behind me, and there never will be. Because
big rival for Troy.
And for people who do not know me that well, I am currently a student at Troy, so you will get some Troy favoritism from me anywhere I go behind a microphone.
Got to root for the Troy Trojans.
You know, you think so? We don't have 5 anymore. We got 4 power conferences. So maybe Clemson proves us wrong because they have that name value. I think voters will favor them. Florida State's the team there in ACC. We'll see what Clemson does, what Miami ain't. But I think in the Big 12, I will tell you to the podcast later in the week, I'm going to have Josh Neighbors, who covers the Big 12. He has a daily podcast covering Big 12. So we're going to talk Big 12 with him. I'll have some SEC Media Days on the show next week. But anyways, I think I agree with you on Utah. I like that team. They got a lot of their defense coming back from that last year. Cam Rising, healthy. He'll be back. If he stays healthy, they should be a favorite. Oklahoma State's that next team. They have a lot of guys coming. They've got their quarterback coming back, Alec Bowman. Of course, Ollie Gordon. I know there's a lot of controversy with the comments made from his head coach last week at Big 12 Media Day, Mike Gundy. But they're going to be really good. The Kansas schools, Kansas State and Kansas, they should kind of fit that next step there. But yeah, I think if they get any teams in, they're probably getting 1, maybe 2, but that would just depend on, say, if Utah wins the conference. Oklahoma State's going to be like a 10 or 11 win team, I think, to get in. So you look at the SEC, we named the teams off. Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, maybe the 5th team. And then you look at the Big 10, I think Ohio State. I don't think Michigan's getting in. I don't think Michigan's going to be that good this year. I think they're an 8-4 team. I think Oregon's going to be really good. That'll be team. I think Penn State will be a solid team. They'll be one to look out for. And they'll have another one get in there somewhere too as well. So yeah, so when you look at, and I don't really feel confident with any group of 5 team. I don't really know who is the favorite of those to get in there. So, and honestly, I don't like that a group of 5 automatically gets in. I think so we're gonna have automatic qualifiers. I just think it should be the best 12 teams. It should not just be you're a conference champion, you get in. I think if you're a group of 5 team and you get in, you at least should have to be ranked like in the top 15 of the college football playoff rankings to get in.
No question.
If you're that highly ranked, but if you're like 24th, but hey, they're the best one, they get in. I don't like that. And another thing I don't like about the playoff, I don't like that. I like that we're going to be playing these games on campuses, but I don't like, it's almost like a disadvantage, or you're not being rewarded for being a top 4. So the top 4 seeds don't get to play a home game. So the SEC champions look, we know the SEC champions are going to be one of the top 4 teams every year. The SEC champion is not going to get to host a home game in this format. They need to change that. I understand they want to make the bowl people happy, But the only games that should be I'm okay with being neutral sites, the semifinals and the championship game. All these other games, the first round and the second round should be on campuses. I hope that is something they look into in the future and change, because if you're a top 4 team, you deserve to get to play one of these games in front of your fans at your home.
There's no question about that. He's Phillip Jordan. He's host of the Phillip Jordan Show. Phillip, before I let you go, tell all my listeners out there where they can find you on social media and how they can listen to your podcast.
They can listen to it everywhere you want to. It's everywhere: YouTube, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. Also, if you're a high school football fan and you want to keep up what's going on with the teams down here, check out the Wiregrass High School Football Report. Had some pretty good conversations so far. Got that show going. We're 3 weeks strong. Podcast has been on fire these first 3 weeks. So check that out, Wiregrass High School Football Report. But if you just want to follow everything I do, just hit me up, social media at PJordanSEC.
Nobody covers the Wiregrass like Phillip Jordan. And Phillip, I'm glad you mentioned high school football. We're a month away. I know you cover all those teams down the Wiregrass like Dothan, Rehoboth, Charles Henderson, Eufaula. I mean, anytime our paths are going to cross, you know that I'm going to definitely have you on the show, especially like when Eufaula comes to Russell County or when Dothan plays Smith Station. I'm excited. Can't wait. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And that's it. That is our show. Thank you, everybody, once again for tuning in to yet another episode of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Hope everybody has a great rest of your night, and we will see you soon.